Jim, if you're okay, we'll start with a wildfire update. It's not on the list, but I think that's appropriate. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
So, Christina, if you could start by bringing in Nancy Bush as soon as she's
Yeah. What I want to say as someone who hung on the line waiting for the meeting to open for 10 minutes yesterday, because I had a bad link. Could someone do we know that someone actually has texted our colleagues so that they have a fair shot at participating in the meeting? I just wish that someone would have texted me back yesterday.
Yep, I think Christina's doing that now. So let's just find Martha, and then we can go.
Waiting for them to filter into the waiting list or the attendees.
Gary?
Yes.
Got an email from Keith Swigert down there in Malala. I guess they want to know why there's no airdrops and the National Guard being called in. I think they're blaming it on the governor, suggesting that they're, quote, letting fires burn, unquote.
That's unfair, but we'll get an update here from Nancy here shortly.
As we learned last night, there are no resources to help us because there are other big major fires they're fighting all over the state. The chief of police last night, the fire chief said, and he's the fire board chair, that they called, asked for resources, and there were none available.
Yep.
But National Guard's in. Alternative. Go ahead.
So
they'd only be good on hand fire crews, and in this wind, you'd have to be very careful where you put a hand fire crew. Let me tell you, that's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking there's counties right now that don't have much of the way of fire danger that could have staff personnel assist as they do in sharing. You know, even Multnomah County doesn't have much risk out there right now. Columbia County, I don't think has any, but I just wondered if there's resources. Normally they do, you know, assist other agencies. I just thought that's kind of scary when there's no resources out there.
Yeah, here's Nancy. So
Sure, go when you are.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Wait. So it's Tuesday, September 9th, 2020. All 5 county commissioners are present. We are having a large issues list. We're going to start with an item not on the list, and that's an update on the wildfires in Clackamas County. Commissioners, you did declare an emergency yesterday. A lot is happening. So we have Nancy Bush, who is the Director of Disaster Management, and our incident commander, not only for the COVID Emergency Operations Center, but now for the Wildfire Emergency Operations Center. We are having 2 emergency operations centers now. So Nancy, would you please give us an update on where we're at on the latest with the wildfires? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And sorry, I was delayed getting on today. So yeah, for the Wildland Fires, we do have a couple things going on. As Gary mentioned, we do have 2 EOCs going, and they are in separate locations. We are sharing some resources between the 2, but we have separated them out for a couple reasons. The funding streams are very different. We have to track everything differently. And of course, a lot of our goals and the mission that we have are very different as well. So we do have 2 EOCs going here in Clackamas County. We hope we do not ever have to have 3. So I'm going to give you an update with what we just got from fire this morning on some of the issues that are going on. And I'm going to go down through the 4 major fires that we have. Audi Road Fire. There were a total of 11 structures lost there. 300 to 400 total structures were threatened. 2,000 acres is estimating being burned there. Unger Hillock burn, there's a total of 7 structures there, and 30 plus structures are threatened. There's estimated of 300 acres burned there. Wilhoit Fire, 2 structures lost. and currently 10 structures being threatened at that area, and an estimated 100+ acres burned. Spangler, which Spangler is new, was new yesterday. 2 structures lost there, 10 acres burned, and they have a good perimeter line, but still burning inside of the control line. And that Spangler is at a lower potential for spread at this time. So there's other things going on here in the EOC as well. I'm sure all of you understand and know things happen very, very, very quickly. The night before last, I'm losing track of days a little bit. It was moving very, very fast, and we had to move people out. And so we did set up some sites, or a couple of sites where people could go. And, you know, the Red Cross was assisting us. At first, we were using Molalla High School as a place where people could go. Then we had to move that because that became threatened at that point. So we went to Clackamas Community College. We were working with the Sandy at the high school. That is no longer a site where we are having people go and park. And we're working on, there are some people there at this time, and we are moving them out. We do have a place for the RVs to go, and we're also moving people to Clackamas Community College. We're working very hard today to find other places for people to park. We're working with the Red Cross to help us do some sheltering as well. And as you can imagine, they're very, very stretched too, and they're helping us. And as I said, they were helping us at Sandy, Molalla, and also at the Clackamas Community College. And we also have some volunteers helping us there that we've worked with through Clackamas Fire, the CERT teams there. So again, we're actively moving people out of Sandy. Sandy is no longer a site. So if you're listening, you're looking for a site, please do not go there, but go to Clackamas Community College. And we do have people on site there that will be able to help you and give you some information. So that is my briefing for fire. If anyone has some questions that I might be able to answer, please let me know.
Yeah, I have a question, Nancy. Appreciate what you're doing. You got to be extraordinarily busy. So the map that on our website that shows the red, yellow, and green zones, right now that's not functional. I don't know why, but I've been looking at it almost every half hour because my daughter is right on the edge of the yellow zone. And so it's just curious as to why it's not working at this time.
It's because they're updating it.
Okay.
It's, I mean, when I left the EOC a few minutes ago, that's what they were working on, was updating it.
I kind of, just one question, I mean, as that map is updated, I imagine, like, for example, the Carver area, just north of the Carver area is a substantial residential area. And a lot of folks live there. And I'm just hoping that that yellow indication doesn't necessarily mean that they're at risk. I think that the level 1 announcement last night really freaked a lot of people out, I'll just tell you. And everyone was panicking. I mean, some people didn't even want to go to sleep last night. So my phone was going crazy. And it was hard for me to try to explain that to folks, that if you're in level 1, which is anywhere in the county or worse, but you know, I'm in the green zone, I'm in the Oak Grove area, but when we're level 1, I mean, I think it's hard to explain what the threat is. I don't want to tell people everything's just fine and don't worry, because we wouldn't be level 1 in the first place. But how do we communicate that in a way that is valuable, and also at the same token isn't throwing the fear of God in everyone?
Right. So thank you. That's a really good question. And how we're messaging that is that, you know, we were very actively, I think we had like 12 activations yesterday at different levels, you know, 1, 2, and 3, and, you know, doing the evacuations. And so the map started, first of all, looking like weird. It was like, well, why is this a level 1? And there's like all of this white space in between, and then there's a level 1 over here. So we had the discussion on how to help. We were hoping, you know, to make things more logical for people. So I understand that people were probably freaked out. So we did go to a level 1 for the county for a couple of reasons. One of them is because there are so many areas that we want to make sure, especially, the most vulnerable, obviously, which is the more rural you are at this point, the more at risk you are, and making sure they're at level 1 and knowing this, like, if you are here, you need to be ready. You need to think about, it's like, if you don't have something packed now, please pack it. If you have animals, please consider that. How are you going to move your animals? And then we did the whole county in level 1 because we want everyone to understand everyone needs to be prepared. And we want people to understand too that if you have family and friends that are in those other areas, that you might help them be prepared as well. And so that you would be able to help them, help yourself. And at this point, we are really trying to message that everyone really does need to be prepared. If, we always need to be prepared. But right now we have fires popping up everywhere. And you're right. I mean, especially the metropolitan area is less impacted with the fires, but it's not impossible.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Just the concern about panic, people over panicking. I know that there's at the grocery stores, people are just consuming everything just like pre-COVID. So.
Yes. And that's a cycle with every disaster. I've been through a lot of disasters, and that is a cycle with every disaster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Say Ken and then Sonia.
Nancy, do you have any idea what resources the governor has deployed for the various fires and where they are? Particularly, is there any word about the use of the National Guard and also airdrop type resources for fire suppression?
So here, I don't know exactly where the state is assisting right now. I don't have that information. That was not part of my briefing this morning. But I do know that they are extremely stretched as well. And I know that Chief Charlton, who is our Fire Defense Board chief, has been working with them to get what he can. As far as the National Guard, I do have someone working with me from Oregon Emergency Management. They're actually here in my EOC. And I have a fire contact working with them to see about different resources and what they might be able to bring. And National Guard, I know, is a discussion. I don't know what the answer will be or if they're able to spare anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonia.
Thank you. And Nancy, thank you for the link to the website for the map of where the fires are. And I just have a question. As you know, there are yellow dots, orange dots, red dots. And if you scroll out on that, you can see that there are multiple red dots in Clackamas County. What exactly do those red dots mean?
Active fire.
So different fires, or just all, they're pretty close together, but those are all individual fires?
Yeah, and they, that website, I will tell you that we do use that website, but it's also not the easiest to read. So sometimes if you click on it, some of those fires are gone. So I'm sorry, I said active fire, but actually I think it was active within such a period of time. But you'll be able to tell when you click on it what the state of that particular fire is.
Okay, that really helps me. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a good question. That is not an easy site.
I want to thank you, Nancy, for your hard work.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. It's rewarding.
Yeah. Martha?
I'm going to apologize for the background noise. I have someone working in the house right now. But Nancy, what's the reason why they're not prepared with resources? I mean, is it because they've sent them to other states, or?
No, it's because we have so many fires here in Oregon.
So
we have I will tell you, there's a very large fire in Marion County, and we don't want that fire in our county. And that's threatened some of our structures. Some of our evacuations for the southern part of the county is because of a Marion County fire.
Really?
And we actually did have, like the Ripplebrook area was also, that evacuation was done because of a Marion County fire. And they had two large fires that actually did converge. So there's a lot of fires in the state. It's not because they don't want to help. It's because their resources are also quite thin.
Yeah.
Also, just, Martha, go ahead.
I just hate to repeat it, but so there isn't going to be the national, doesn't the governor have to call out the National Guard? I mean,
Yes.
and has not even thought about that yet?
We are, and that's one of the things that my OEM contact is working on here
Okay.
in my EOC here. I just don't know the answer to any of the questions yet because we're actively working those things.
And just so you know, I did talk to Senator Merkley yesterday and Representative Schrader about resources, and Senator Merkley, who is there, is doing the best he can to fulfill our needs. Thank you. Nancy, go ahead on.
Yeah.
So Nancy, if you'd like to go ahead to the COVID-19 update. COVID's not gone away, so can you please provide an update?
Yes, and I do want to say one more thing. I just heard something from my fire chief too. I asked about investigations because there's rumors going around about how the fires were started. They haven't focused, of course, on the investigations of how fires were started, but we do know that a couple of them were started with downed fire lines. One of my other fire chiefs had told me that, and they're anticipating that it was those types of issues. So I just wanted to let you guys know that because I know there was a question about that earlier too. Okay, ready for COVID. All right, I do have a report for you today, and I just want to let you know tomorrow, Philip Mason Joyner and Dr. Sarah Present are going to be appearing for me tomorrow to give you a more detailed update. I will be here on tomorrow, of course, to talk about the fires, but they'll be doing that tomorrow. So with our numbers, it's been a while since we met, so I'm not going to do any increases from like last week. But Oregon, there's 28,355 positives, 486 deaths, 144 negatives. Clackamas County has 2,095 positives, 58 deaths, 53,956 negatives. Multnomah County has 343 positives, 124 deaths, 126,389 negatives. Washington County has 3,996 positives, 49 deaths, 82,147 negatives. Statewide, we have 105 that are hospitalized, 33 are currently in ICU beds, and 20 of those are on vents. Statewide, we have 190 adult ICU beds that are available and 778 vents. And also just to say, of course, we have a lot of smoke from the fires, which is impacting not, COVID or anyone who may have COVID that is staying at home. So we're trying to be really mindful of some of those things that are going on too with the people who have breathing issues with the smoke. And we're working with public health to get out messaging. And that's where, some of these things are crossing over. So for the week of August 31st through September 6th, there were 123 cases here in Clackamas County, and that is just below 30 per 100,000. Total outbreaks as of 9/7, there are 48 outbreaks. 21 of those are workplaces, 8 are food and farm, 15 are long-term care facilities, or retirement, and daycare is 1, healthcare facilities is 1, and other is 1, again for a total of 48. And of course the EOC for COVID has everything still moving forward, doing everything, including our GO teams, the food boxes. I don't have those numbers for you today, but just rest assured that that continues to move forward in our COVID EOC. So that is my briefing today for COVID.
You're on mute, Jim.
Yeah. Any questions? I don't see any. Nancy, thank you again for your hard work and your many hours.
Okay, thank you guys very much, and we will see you tomorrow.
So you're not
Thank
done
you.
yet, Nancy. If
Oh,
you'll hang
I'm
out
sorry.
just one more. So next, commissioners, your COVID-19 emergency declaration expires this week. So Stephen Madcourt, County Council, and Nancy has a proposal. Staff is proposing you extend the declaration. But Stephen, if you could please review the update.
Sure. Thank you, Gary. Good morning. Yes, as Gary mentioned, your current addendum number 4 to your initial emergency declaration expires this week. We have circulated a proposed addendum number 5. It would include all of the emergency measures that have previously been implemented. It does not add any new ones. It would extend it until January 8th. Apparently the board is on break over the holiday, Christmas and New Year's, and to allow for it to extend uninterrupted, we're extending it until the 8th. And we circulated it, Gary did, to you yesterday. Would you care to see it on your screen right now or not?
I don't need to.
Okay.
Anyone? Okay, we're good.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve extending the COVID emergency till January 8th, I think you said.
That's correct.
Any other discussion? Please poll us.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humberstone,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all. Now, Nancy, you are finished. Thank you so much. And I reiterate what the commissioners have shared. I mean, Nancy, in a normal, having one emergency is enough, but we're under 2. And you make it look easy, Nancy. Thank you to you and your team for the hours and hours of work, sleepless nights you have been under. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Right, next, if Stephen, if you could give a quick update on the Oregon Supreme Court's recent decision regarding the former city of Damascus, please.
Yes, sir. On Thursday, September 3rd, the Oregon Supreme Court issued its long-awaited opinion in the case of City of Damascus versus the state of Oregon. This concerned a challenge to the retroactive legislation that would basically ratify the original dissolution vote from 2016. The Supreme Court held in a unanimous opinion authored by Justice Tom Balmer that the disincorporation will stand. There were a number of challenges to the lawfulness of the legislative acts, but the court found that the intent of the legislature was clearly expressed, and the vote of the populace of Damascus verified that. This case has great significance to Clackamas County, as you know, because 4 years ago, the county basically inherited and assumed control of not only Damascus financial accounts, but also transferred their employees as required under state statute, assumed their equipment, their real property, their personal property, and even gave tax refunds to some of the former residents of the former city of Damascus. So it had great significance to Clackamas County, but the court said the disincorporation will stand, and it is essentially status quo at this time. The only challenge for appeal would be to the United States Supreme Court. The likelihood of that court taking it would be very low in my estimation. So like I said, it is very significant news for the county. The alternative would have been quite a challenge.
So just to be clear, Damascus is now unincorporated Clackamas County.
You are correct, sir.
I have had emails questioning, what are we then? And it is unincorporated Clackamas County, so the tax rate is Clackamas County's tax rate. The law enforcement will be regular sheriff's law enforcement. It is not an enhanced district, is it? No.
It is not.
It is something that I hope those people consider, joining the enhanced law enforcement district. So all other planning, all those other processes are processed through the county as in other areas in this county.
You're correct, Chair. And those are all services and tasks that the county has assumed since the disincorporation vote in 2016.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Next, supportive housing services measure implementation and the proposal of a loan from the county's general fund to the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Please bring in Rich Swift, Ed Johnson, Elizabeth Comfort. There's a memo that was in your packet for you on this, commissioners. And I will recognize Commissioner Fisher, who originally suggested this idea during your budget committee meetings in May and June. So we are reporting back to you, commissioners, from that suggestion to seek your approval of doing this proposed loan. So that's the tee up for you. I don't know if Rich, you'd like to start, or Ed?
Sure, I can jump in here and start to introduce the topic, and thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. So we're here to talk about preparing for Measure 26210. Some time ago, I asked Jill Smith to put together a plan in terms of how we would begin to build the capacity for preparing for 26210, which actually has to begin now. Even though we'll be receiving our first receipts from the measure, probably my sense of this is April, in terms of the first quarter estimated tax payments coming in, we still need to begin building up our capacity to implement the measure. So I asked Jill for the plan. She submitted me the plan. I actually sent it back to her, asking her to please include a deputy director for the Housing Authority, because she absolutely needs someone to help her run the Housing Authority. She does not have that right now, so that she can actually step back and strategically look at how the county is implementing housing and housing services for the residents of this county. So once we got that plan, looked it over, which I have open in front of me, sent it to Administrator Schmidt for review, and ultimately Administrator Schmidt's approval for that plan. And part of that plan was contingent upon our capacity to arrange some sort of loan with the county. So then I asked Ed Johnson, who's here with us today, to talk with Elizabeth Comfort about what that might look like. We do have a budget of $1.1 million in terms of how we would use those loan receipts. And so I believe Ed and Elizabeth have worked out preliminary some aspects of a loan. We're still negotiating that, and this will be a loan between the county and the Housing Authority. So with that, maybe I can have either I'll answer questions about the overall plan in terms of how we're preparing for 26210, or we can talk about the loan.
You're on mute, Jim. Jim, you're on mute.
Paul, did you want to ask something now?
Yeah, I do. I put a request in yesterday for something essentially, basically, that's solid, that says, yes, we're going to get money. Here's a guarantee we're going to get money. Yes, there is going to be eligibility clarity as to what is billable, eligible, and all of that. My concern is that because this was rushed together in such a way that we didn't have that when it hit the ballot, there's nothing firm. Do we have a contract or an IGA that says we absolutely will get a proportion, and these services actually will be covered? And absent that, I'm very reluctant to start spending money for something that has yet to be defined. I mean, we're still scrambling to get even what the committee looks like. And I got issues with that as well, because I saw the draft for the committee assignments. I mean, where's the accountability? I mean, if it's simply not, if there's not some role for the elected officials in Clackamas County, commissioners, I would presume, some role to assure that we've got a voice at the table, and that is somehow going to be conveyed or abdicated to a committee in which we don't have appointing authority, Metro does, but we might have a role of influencing who's on the list. And then we're going to absorb a financial risk. I'm just concerned about what tends to be a regional practice is we get very little, and the rest of the region gets a whole lot. So what is there? I did send a request in yesterday. What do we have absolutely firm that says we have a contractual guarantee. I almost like an attorney in the room to tell me what contractually do we have. Thank you. I see Mr. Madcore there. That assures that we're going to get revenue from this measure. And what is eligible to be spent, those dollars be spent on.
Stephen, do you, I mean,
I have no involvement in this matter. I'm not familiar with it at all.
So I'd be reluctant to commit $1 million. And frankly, this ought to be a work session, frankly, not an issues deal, but there ought to be some clear lines that says that money will be flowed, and as well as a clear defined payback. And that wasn't in the packet as much as what I saw yesterday.
so we know for a fact that we will have receipts from the measure of 26,210. And estimates that we have from Metro at this point are probably no less than 13 million. It could be more. And so what we're doing is essentially arranging a loan based on what would be eligible administrative costs, and we're looking to spread this in terms of loan terms across 2 years. We are working out the final agreements with Metro on the overall IGA governing 26,210. And so we do find ourselves in a little bit of a position, Commissioner Savas, in regards to having to move into the implementation pieces of the work. And because there are expectations regarding the measure and how it's constructed regarding that work and the timeframes for that work. So, and we do intend actually to do a work session with the board describing this more in detail. And so the intent here was, as soon as we had some things arranged and we knew what we were planning to do or trying to do, that we would put that in front of the board as an introduction for the efforts. So that, and now we have some sense of effort, some sense of planning, and so what we wanted to do was begin that conversation with the board. We're not looking to the board today to approve this loan. What we wanted to do was begin to have this conversation with the board so we could elucidate issues, pull those out, and then put those into a work session. I am absolutely willing to guarantee we will see proceeds from the measure, and that those proceeds will be enough to allow for us to pay back this loan amount over 2 years.
Well, so the expenditures that you make, for example, and I'm glad to hear that that's kind of the plan to roll out so we get some more detail around this, but I would like legal review of this.
Absolutely.
My question, for example, is one this, okay? So do we get, whether it's our 5% or whatever, the admin fee, is that admin fee based on, that percentage based on what a mathematical share of the money would be regionally, or is it based on the amount we actually get? So if the committee says, you know what, we're going to give all this money to everyone but Clackamas, and we only, let's say, get maybe $1 million, is our percentage based on the million, or is it based on a regional share? And where's the math that solidly demonstrates that?
That percentage is based on Clackamas County receipts as determined in the measure, and it's quite specific in terms of the percentages of the breakouts. It's just in many ways like the Metro bond in terms of those percentages. And we have been getting the dollars that were due to Clackamas regarding the bond. And so there's absolutely no reason to believe that they're going to be scooping up Clackamas County receipts and giving them to Multnomah or Washington County.
Well, that
was not done in the bond. And so, and I look at the behavior of the organizations we're working with, and Metro's behavior related to the bond and its execution has been nothing but exemplary in terms of the funding that we were supposed to receive and have received in order to implement the bond.
Yeah, I just haven't, even before this is on the ballot, we were asking those questions, and then we said, we'll get to that later. So if you've got absolute confirmation of that, and that's language that's a certain, share that with me.
Okay, so we will do that in a work session. Jill couldn't be here today because there's some things going on with the Housing Authority and the impact to the Hillside Manor and Power, and also some fire concerns in terms of Oregon City. And so we will absolutely be sitting down and doing that in work session. This was just a preliminary introduction to the board. There's a lot going on, and you know, we've made a commitment to as much as possible and early as possible to let the board know what we're thinking and what we're trying to do. And so that this is what this policy issue session is for, is that introduction.
So Martha, did you want to ask a question now? Go ahead.
And I moved outside to try and get away from the noise. In any case, I guess my question is, why do we have to use general fund? Do we not have funds with the housing authority? And is there a way that I know that we have dollars set aside with our FQHCs? Is there any way we can use those dollars to do the backfill with the assurance that they're going to be paid back? I guess I'm wondering if there's other ways you could fund this. And also, when I look at the money, it seems it's mostly administrative setup as opposed to actual boots on the ground services. You know, so maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but it's, you know, it's mostly just policy program planner, it's new staff, it's community engagement, you know, all that kind of stuff. So how about answering the money first, and then it doesn't seem to be the real service delivery as much as it's just kind of setting the stage for it.
And we need to set the stage for it, Commissioner.
Right.
We don't have the capacity to actually do this work without setting the stage.
Okay, so basically this is added to our overall costs then with our services. Okay, all right, thanks. So,
Then on the loan, you know, the source of the loan is actually not my determination. This is part of this conversation with the board to see, you know, how we would like to structure this. We do know that currently HCS does not have the dollars to
right.
do this work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Martha, you done?
I'm done, but I'm kind of tending to agree with Paul with this. I feel like still it's kind of murky, and it's not our staff's fault. I'm just leery of the way this is set up, and things like Metro pushing not to have this be a public process for selections on committees, things like that make me feel very uncomfortable, and certainly don't give me the feeling that there's a lot of trust going around to share at this point. So there you go. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Sonia?
Actually, Martha asked my question and Rich answered it. So thank you, Rich. I really appreciate the answer about the money being needed to do the systems development and the planning so that we are ready to receive the dollars. And I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
All right, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, an example, Rich, I do hear you speaking highly of Metro in this regard, but I'll tell you how they can really get a lot more trust out of me is that let us pick our Clackamas County people.
Okay.
Why is that such a big deal? Why can't we select our own Clackamas County representatives to be responsible at the table? We need some kind of oversight. And if we don't have that power, then how can we assure our citizens the dollars are being well spent and directed properly?
I agree. So
they want trust. That's how they can get it from me. Thank you.
okay, that's good, and that's absolutely duly noted, and will be communicated to Metro.
And that's the topic next on your agenda, Commissioners.
Ken?
Yeah, Paul kind of stole the argument, but I absolutely agree. We should be able to pick our own representatives, period, end of discussion. If we can't pick our own representatives, it means that they're trying to salt the board with their people, and our voice, for all intents and purposes, would be null and void. So we either pick our own people or we have a real problem.
Well, distrust of Metro is obviously apparent here. It's not. I disagree. You know, the one thing that Metro does do when they're going to screw us, they show us they're going to screw us. I feel pretty comfortable that we know when we're going to get screwed. Metro lets us know. And in this case, I agree, it'd be nice to appoint our own people and they shouldn't have anything to say about it. But anyway, so let's move on to the second part of this discussion.
All right, so stick around, Rich and
Sure.
Ed and Elizabeth. So the next part is the structure for the Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee. Drenda Howitt and Jill Smith have been staffing this, and both of them are not able to be here right at this moment, but I did forward you the memo from Metro that talked about the committee structure, how it would be appointed, and the application process. And Rich, you can help me here. My memory, commissioners, this was all part of the discussions the group had before the ballot measure even got in the ballot. So this should not be a surprise to you. We had concerns back then, which we expressed to Metro, and I'll use the term overruled. It still went forward. So this is not new. You all heard this back before the ballot in May about this would be the structure of the Oversight Committee. So just all I'm offering you today are some very much more clarity on how these individuals will be picked. If you have concerns, today's the deadline, so you can tell me and we'll tell Metro. Apparently Washington and Multnomah County are on board, so we would be the sole in opposition. We could try and change it. But again, your influence is in recommending 8 to 10 members from Clackamas County to serve on this Oversight Committee. Metro Council makes the final decision. So, I mean, I'm talking strategy here. You can decide to nominate 5, only 5 from Clackamas County, and then tie the hands of Metro. They have to pick the 5 you nominated because that's all you nominate. They also could overrule you and pick another 5. Metro staff I've talked to, they are said we want to obviously work with the counties, and I trust my colleagues at Metro if that staff is telling me that, so that we would have influence on who would be the final 5 representing Clackamas County. But again, the Metro Council would make that final call, and you knew all that back in March and April when this ballot measure was going forward last year. So with that, if you have feedback, I'm happy to take notes and we'll relay it to Metro. But again, today's the deadline to hear your feedback on this.
Paul, and then Sonia, and then Ken.
Well, Gary, you're right. This was brought before us, and we did echo these concerns, but they're not satisfied and reflective of those concerns. And I have to just think. I mean, for example, if we look at the NCPRD agreement with Milwaukee can select their person. We can't say one way or another who or what that is, who that person is. So what, we're going to have a double standard? We're going to be treated differently, but we're going to act differently. I mean, we need to be consistent. And it hasn't come back to the level that I'm satisfied with. Again, I think that there's an inherent responsibility to the taxpayers for these dollars to deliver services on behalf of our residents of our county, okay, period. And if we don't have any power or a voice at the table as the elected representatives of this county, how do we do that? How do I straight face any citizen in this county and say, yeah, we've got some authority, we've got accountability. There is no accountability under this measure on our behalf. I don't see it. If it's there, show me. But I read it. It's not there.
All right, Chair Bernard, are you still there? All right, Commissioner Fisher, you're next.
So my understanding is that Metro wants some discretion so that they can make sure that the overall committee is reflective of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I wish Jill was here to talk about that, but I know that when they did the Metro housing bond, we recommended people that were on the committee, and the process worked really, really well. And maybe Rich has some insight into that.
Yeah, the Metro bond, oops, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. And then I'm not quite done yet, but go ahead. The Metro
Bond Committee, actually, in terms of oversight, has gone, it's gone really well. I mean, the reality is they've been incredibly supportive of the work and the projects that we've submitted to them. They've gone forward for approval. We see no issues with approval from Metro on these. They applauded us in terms of our equity, diversity, inclusion work sort of basically looked at us as, in some ways, as a model in terms of the work that was done for Washington County and both Multnomah, which actually, given Multnomah's record in the EDI space, was actually, it was a nice feather in our cap. So this will continue. They've actually still look to us to consult on how to structure these things. I see no reason for this relationship to discontinue. We have myself, Jill, others have excellent relationship with Metro. I think the 26210 has allowed Drenda, has allowed Administrator Schmidt to come into these relationships and expand our role with Metro, and actually, in all honesty, the influence that we have with Metro in this overall housing structure. And so I understand the board's reluctance related to accountability. These are things that we will absolutely sit down with Metro and discuss. I can guarantee you the minute I stop meeting with you all, I'll be picking up the phone and having some conversations with some folks about driving this forward and the requirements that we're going to need to assure that the dollars that come into this county related to supportive housing are spent according to the needs of this county, not according to the needs of Multnomah or Washington, which are different. But the other piece of this too is, and this is recognized by Metro in terms of the equity, diversity, and inclusion space, is the fact that the houseless and the housing issues faced by Clackamas County are regional, and that they don't, like the fires going on, they don't respect the boundaries and borders. They don't care. This is very regional in nature. It's not according to party either. This is all about how people are moving around and the financial issues and economic issues that are faced by the residents in Clackamas and also in the other two counties. When we look at the economic impacts of COVID, we are looking at an economic impact of over 40% unemployment within a particular strata nationally for folks working who were working, who are now not. This has not affected high wage income earners. This has affected low wage income earners almost exclusively. And so we will also be dealing with those impacts. We need this regional partnership. This county cannot lift it on its own.
Just one other piece to finish up, because I had one other comment. We've done, and Paul and I were at most of our housing and homelessness task force meetings when they were occurring, our Clackamas County based. We have an excellent pool of people that are engaged with Clackamas County. We have more than 10 for sure that we could recommend to Metro. And I would just like to say that we as a commission are engaged with the 8 or 10 that we feel comfortable with in presenting our views, and then give Metro that discretion. Because if all 3 counties just said we are going to appoint who we want, then the overall regional view could be very challenged when it comes to an overall diversity, equity lens. We need to have that as a region, but we also need to feel comfortable. So I'm about accomplishing both goals, and I think we can do it.
So Ken, Martha, and then Paul.
For me, this is about us trying to build trust with Metro. I've spent the last 3.5 years at over 100 different community meetings, and one of the more universal sentiments that I hear from all the different communities throughout this county is a distrust of Metro. And I've repeatedly said we need to work with Metro in a positive way, because they exist, they're going to continue to exist for the foreseeable future, and that our job is not to get in a fight with them if we can possibly avoid it, but to actually work constructively with them. So for me, the issue of being allowed to appoint the people that we want on this committee is an issue of trust, of them trusting us to appoint the people that will work to further the objectives of the bond monies. That's what this is about. I need to be able to tell the general public that, look it, we put our foot down with Metro. We said, this is what we want. Metro is cooperating with us. And consequently, we are cooperating with Metro. So this, for me, is sort of a litmus test issue about trust. And as a representative of all of those folks here in this county that really have some difficulty trusting Metro, I think this is an important issue.
Martha? Thank you, Ken. Mike?
So you mentioned regionalism again, and so most of this is being directed under the metro umbrella boundary. So what is your plan to make it truly regional, to make sure that those rural areas at this point in time that are undergoing such extreme stress and are being evacuated will get at least something for housing? The only example I can think of at this point is you finally found a nonprofit that deals with farm worker housing, for example, and at least has the expertise to get USDA dollars for those areas. So are you planning to take and reinvest some of the money in other words, are you going to do a replacement plan so that we can help those other, if we're really going to really think of the whole county with housing? Because you're going to get more money for the urban areas. I mean, I know I'm singing this tune, but when it talks about regional, I can never get a straight answer about what that means. Does it mean the county, or does it just mean under the metro umbrella? And I'm assuming that you're going to have more resources to put towards now the stressful issues that we're going to be dealing with in our rural areas as they're being evacuated. Is that true?
Well, actually, this is what the planning efforts for, Commissioner Schrader. So we don't have, we haven't received any $26,210 yet. And so we can't start looking at allocating or reallocating dollars differently outside the metro bond area. So that's part of this planning effort, is to look at the overall, and that's why I need to have a deputy director at the housing authority.
Okay.
Who can step back and look across the county and look at, okay, this is what's happening with metro, this is what's happening within the region. Now, what can we do in all of Clackamas County to address housing and houselessness? And so, but that's part of this capacity building. Because right now what I have is a lot of staff doing fantastic work, but they're all having a difficult time picking their heads up to look around. I have the housing authority staff focused on right now the electric switch gear for the generator at the manor, so that the elevators can stay in operation. I don't actually have staff who can pick their head up beyond that. So this is what this capacity is about.
Okay.
For it.
Well, that's a really good answer. I really appreciate that, because that's what I've been concerned about all along, in that
Yeah,
we just can't focus on the urban areas of the county, particularly when our rural areas are at this very moment burning to a crisp. And that's pretty much it. The other question I have is there an ex officio member from the county as a commissioner that is going to be appointed to serve on this board ex officio with Metro?
I don't have an answer for that.
Gary, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, the answer is no. This is a community committee, oversight committee. Ultimately, this committee reports to the Metro Council. So.
Okay, but isn't there another committee that has an ex officio member?
There's a staff level committee. Yeah, I mean, there are multiple committees here. So I don't think that one is a commissioner. We'll follow up.
Okay, I would like to follow up, and I would like to make it perfectly clear that we don't have people self-anointing themselves as liaisons, that basically this is a full board discussion about who gets to do that, if that is the case. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, one thing, I'm sorry, excuse me, but I believe Ahid Brown was supposed to be pulled into this meeting and was not. Is he in the lobby?
Yes, he's in the waiting room to speak on this topic of the committee structure.
He had some specific details. If we could maybe pull him in, he could touch upon those briefly.
That's fine. Commissioners, I respectfully don't want you to take a lot more time, because we have at least half more stuff to talk about today. And again, this train has left the station, so I'm happy. Staff will advocate for you, but I don't think we're going to get what you're asking for. I just got to be upfront with you about that. So again, tell us the message you want to deliver. If I may, it's what Commissioner Fisher's right. This is all about diversity. If we were to pick people, if each county did this individually without collaborating, we would not have a diverse committee, and that's part of this purpose. And again, again, this was information we all received a long time ago. We didn't like it. We fought back and we lost. So at this point, it's how can we make sure we can share your feedback, but again, this train has left the station. So I just want to be upfront about that. Thank you.
So, Paul, before I call on you, Gary, is there a news conference at 11?
There is, yes.
And am I supposed to be at this?
You have a role if you wish, but I prefer you stay here, Jim, because there's a lot more stuff we need to talk
Well, I agree. So, all right. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to say, so no disrespect intended to any of my colleagues, but I read the material and I heard what Gary just said. So I guess I need clarity. I heard Sonia say that, you know, members of our Affordable Housing Committee. Well, I was under the presumption maybe that we would have people of certain types of expertise, people in the services industry, maybe an accountant with financial experience, perhaps a legal person, diverse array of people, and of course a person of color or a person who is familiar or from a diverse aspect of our community, or be able to represent that. So I saw a mixture. Are we saying now that it's exclusively going to be a BIPOC community at the table, these 5 members? Or is it going to be all strictly housing people that are people of color? Or is it and lacking some of those professions maybe that we would want to have? Again, accounting. Again, somehow we need to have the accountability of the dollars, the services, array of expertise, expert skill sets, proficiencies. How are we going to get that? Or is it one or the other? Which is it?
Can we ask Vahid, can you clarify anything on this committee? Vahid, would you please unmute yourself?
So the community, the oversight committee, the measure, I believe it does, excuse me, include sectoral requirements, as Commissioner Savas is alluding to, that there are representatives that speak from different sectors of expertise and so forth. It's not an exclusively communities of color representative committee. No, there is an emphasis on it having a disproportionate number of members from communities of color on that committee. In other words, we have a very, very small percentage of people in Clackamas County or in the region who are non-white relatively. And the committee should, in Metro's view, have more people representing communities of color because there is a disproportionate representation of communities of color amongst people experiencing homelessness that the measure is meant to serve. So because it's meant to serve a community within which communities of color are disproportionately represented, they wanted to have that oversight committee reflect that community being served, right? So it's not an exclusively communities of color committee, the oversight committee. The measure also includes for the local implementation plan. The local implementation plan that we are working on developing at the staff level also has measure required representatives of a local kind of task force or advisory committee that helps us shape that also has strong emphasis on representation from communities of color and some sectoral requirement representation, including philanthropy, business, the social service provider community. I think those are the main ones. It also must have a representative of a local elected or an elected official, or their representative, staff from the agency that will be administering the program. In other words, Health, Housing, and Human Services. We are working on putting that local task force together as well. That local task force informs our local implementation plan, which really defines our funding priorities for the first several years of the measure. That plan will come to the board, ideally December, January. I mean, I don't have a hard date, but we're looking to have that completed as soon as possible. I've already contracted community engagement specialists to help us develop that local implementation plan. And that is something that the board must approve before it moves further. So that's another area where the Board of County Commissioners' influence on how this measure is implemented in Clackamas County can be brought to bear.
Well, thank you, Vahid. That helps, but it doesn't completely satisfy my concerns. So the other aspect, that question I had, I'm gonna back up. So Gary, when you say the ship sailed, I don't get a lot of comfort in that. I don't get a lot of comfort that the last time we talked about this, we gave direction and we came up shorthanded, so to speak. Maybe we got a little bit, but we didn't really get to the finish line. So if we concede now, we're going to get ran over from here on out. I think we need to make the stand, frankly, and get the ability to appoint our folks and have the criteria spelled out. We'll meet our criteria as Vahid laid out. But the other thing I wanted to say is that what I said, and this is what I said early on before this thing ever hit the ballot, and that was my concern is the state is just going to start defunding all those services that they currently fund now, because they're going to realize we've got this measure out there. So, and they're in a dire financial situation as it is. So they're going to cut, and they're probably going to cut the metro region. So I'm worried about really adding a lot of staff, Rich, frankly, when we might be we might be a net zero situation. We might find out that we don't have any more extra dollars for supportive services because the state took it all away from us on the other end. That is a concern that's going to get to Commissioner Schrader's concern, which I agree with, is that'll leave the rural area higher and drier than they've ever been. So we have to look at this thing holistically here and realize what's about to happen. And this just happened with the state on transportation. We got the HB 2017 money for transit. What did the state do? They robbed a bucket. Okay, they defunded a transit bucket for services, and they use the HB 2017 dollars to do that. It's a common practice.
All right. Well, so one of the things we can do, Commissioner Savas, to answer that question is do a budget analysis based on, you know, what we're currently getting from the state in terms of our housing dollars, so we can look at what would be at risk for reduction from the state given the Metro 26210. We could absolutely do that as part of our work plan session with you all.
Elizabeth, would you like to add anything, or Ed? Don't want to step in this water.
We're on two different topics here, though. So are we going back to the budget request then?
Well, that's one thing that was not answered.
Right, because we jumped ahead already. So if I may, on the proposed loan, commissioners, would you like to have a policy session to discuss further, or do you want to kill it right now?
I'm ready to move forward on this. I just don't, you know, there's no way that we're not going to get the money that our taxpayers paid for this ballot measure. There's no way. They can't just suck it up. So as far as the loan, I'm in support of doing that. And, you know, I texted Lynn Peterson. I told her that, you know, we're having problems with it. She said she'd like to talk, and I said, I'll call you tonight and I'll see what we can do. I don't disagree with everybody. You know, there is some mistrust, but frankly, in some of the other committee appointments that Metro has made, they did listen to us. They did choose the people we selected. And in the end, it worked out. So what do we want to do about the loan?
I still haven't had my question answered as to why it has to come from the general fund. Why can't it come from the housing authority or the surplus dollars with our healthcare clinics? Is that just not doing?
Could somebody answer that?
Well, from the housing authority actually doesn't have the dollars.
Okay.
And then if we loan from the F2HC, you know, that would have to go through approval by the, you know, their governing body, which is the
Community Health Council.
Community Health.
And those dollars are restricted. Health Centers made a loan to HAG, to the Housing Authority,
okay,
earlier this year, but they used general fund dollars. So the restricted dollars aren't eligible to be loaned out unless there's more general fund dollars that are allocated to the health centers.
Okay, so we'd kind of be shuffling around our loans with that pot of money. Okay. Elizabeth, have you got anything to add to?
I don't. I could share that within our general fund contingency, we have approximately 15% of our operating funds there. And we are doing a 2.0173% interest proposed for this loan. That will include, that'll cover some handling and management of this loan process. So I think that would be a good use of the funds to do this loan and charge that interest rate. And we have the funds available for this type of operation. It would be a 2-year payback, which we'll manage out of the finance department with HAC, with the Housing Authority. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Commissioner.
So you think it's doable from a professional perspective on how we're managing our general fund?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Sonia?
I'm not sure if we want to finish up this conversation first before I just say that I really support what Paul's saying to do an analysis over what money we get from the state, because I've been concerned as we're going into this recession of exactly what he's talking about. And we are going to have a conversation later today on our legislative priorities. So I just want to flag it for everyone. We need to be on top of this, and we need to have this be part of our advocacy at the legislature. But I didn't want to detract from the loan conversation. I just wanted to say that I really support what Paul's saying. It's really, really important.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And again, my issue on that one, again, just to state, is that if the state does rob that bucket, then we're adding staff at a cost we just can't justify, right? And then we're going to have excess staff. So that's why I asked for a statewide measure or some kind of state guarantee they're not going to rob those buckets. But I think the agreement, I'm willing to bring this back for a discussion, okay, for a work session on the loan. The other aspect, and maybe this fire thing will cool down, but I'm extremely worried between the COVID, the people that have lost their homes, and all the other emergency needs we have right now, that we look to something else other than the general fund for these dollars. Because I think we're gonna have to be nimble if this crisis and this winter is as bad as we think it's gonna be. I'm extremely concerned. So if we can apply to whatever organization for using the healthcare dollars for the loan, great. But I think we should be doing that. But at the same token, concerned again that the state might rob those dollars and we're hiring people, which we may not have the resources to keep employed here.
All right, I think I'm hearing consensus to move to a policy session. Is that okay, commissioners?
Yes.
Loan portion, thank you. The second part of this is the committee structure. I've heard it loud and clear, so Rich and I and Chair Bernard will all talk to our various peers at Metro to share this feedback and see what influence we can have.
We'll absolutely do that.
Hey, Gary, would you be sure to also include just my concern that I honestly think we can come up with 8 people that we all agree to for them to choose from that would allow them to have the flexibility for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't want to lose that view. We have that as a value in Clackamas County, and we have some real quality members that we can select.
Yes.
I do have a question about that too. Are we going to be having individual commissioners calling and recruiting people? Or how's this going to happen? I mean, that's my...
It's going to be done like an advisory board. So there's an application process that at this point is supposed to go out this Friday, region-wide. All 3 counties will use the same application. It comes to Clackamas County. Our staff will review and interview candidates. If a commissioner wants to be a part of that, we can do that. And then board, you will decide in the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks to pick 8 to 10 people to recommend to Metro. So it's entirely an ABC process that we do here at Clackamas.
And my issue is the impartiality and the integrity of that process. I, as a rule, do not call and recruit people for a lot of these things. I let our citizens step forward themselves. So I would just caution us that that is not something I would like to see happen in this particular thing. I think we need to let the people that are interested apply. And I think, quite frankly, we need to be hands-off until we see who comes forward. Just saying.
Okay, Ken?
Yeah, I want to clarify one thing. My issue predominantly has been the issue of selecting the people that we want on that committee. I am firmly committed to the equity, diversity, and inclusion standards for that selection, as well as the skill set selection aspect of it. So that is not my issue. It's that if we pick 5, 8, whatever number of people, and whatever we pick meets those standards, which is, I believe, standards we should meet, then the people we pick should be on there, period. That's my issue. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll be super quick. Is that if there's going to be a commissioner on there, then I need to understand the double standard or potential double standard, because on NCPRD we made it perfectly clear that we should have elected officials on advisory committees. So which is it, folks? All I'm asking for is consistency. We're not consistent.
Paul, I can give some insight as to what the Here Together Coalition talked about in that regard. And that was really Catherine Harrington wanting to be, she brought that up as a part of this to just have more engagement for more understanding. And so at that time, the commissioner would be ex officio, so would not have a vote, but would just be there. And honestly, these meetings will be public, so anybody could listen in and participate in that regard. But ex officio was what was discussed.
And that was my question earlier, because I had heard that there is a committee. And again, my concern is the ex officio member has to be a complete discussion on the board of who is liaison for this. But it is ex officio, you're correct. And there is no vote involved. So imagine if we're going to bring NCPRD into the equation, I think that's what we could do with NCPRD. Just, have an ex officio commissioner involved with it. No matter what, whether you can vote or not, there's still quite a bit of influence, I think, that can be projected out there. So.
All right, let's move on to the next issue, Gary.
Okay, thank you, Rich, Elizabeth, and Ed, very much.
Thank you. Alrighty.
Right. Next, I'll do this one. The commissioners, there's a proposed intergovernmental agreement between the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office to use the Public Safety Training Center and the Bowman Building, which was formerly called North Station, to allow the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency to use our facilities for training purposes. This goes before you, commissioners, for your approval. This is simply a business transaction between the Sheriff's Office and a single law enforcement agency. This is a common practice with the Sheriff's Office, where he does partner with other local law enforcement agencies, both state and federal, to use our facilities for training purposes. But I will say this is a optics issue, where if you choose to go forward, we're allowing the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency to do work in our county buildings. So the sheriff is wanting to put this on the consent agenda, but I said that I would bring it to you first to see if you had any concerns before we put it on the agenda. The financial implications is that we will get money from the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency. The proposal is $200,000 over a 5-year agreement that they will pay us to use our training facilities. This is a perfectly legal agreement. Our county council has signed off. So simply at this point, do you have any concerns with this moving forward to your consent agenda?
So I got my hand up, so I'm going to say I'm a no. Absolutely a no. And it is the optics. Sonia.
Yeah, I'm not interested in making our county a target for any additional protests or concerns. And so I think we
Paul,
I'm gonna chime in. If the motivation to do this is solely for the dollars, then $50,000 is not worth the optic issue that my colleagues have just talked about. So it needs to be more substantial and more compelling.
yeah, Martha,
I'm a no.
Ken? Okay, well, we got our answer there, Gary.
Okay, so I will let the sheriff know and it will not go on your consent agenda. Okay, next, your business meeting agenda for this Thursday. Oh my gosh, what's the date? This Thursday, September 10th. You will have a COVID-19 update. We'll add a wildfire update to the start of your meeting. You have a approval of a reading and adoption of a previously approved land use ordinance for minor time-sensitive comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance amendments. You'll have a second public hearing amending the county code local contract review board rules, and then quite a long consent agenda because you've been away for 2 weeks. If you have any questions, if you please let me know prior to Thursday, well, prior to tomorrow, and we'll answer those questions for you. Next, advisory board and commission appointments. Christina, if you would please do that. And I will say, as she gets to the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Board, you already made this decision. This is just affirming the decision you made August 17th, just for the record. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, staff is recommending extending the terms for Deborah Borowski, Grover Brumfield, and Ben Johnson so that their term will end on 10/31/20. Like Gary said, you've already made that. And then the second one is for the Development Agency Budget Committee. Staff is recommending reappointing of Sally Rask to her 4th term and moving Kirk Morganson from an alternate to a regular member.
Any, oh, Martha, your hand's still up? No, Paul?
I had a question. I mean, right now, I believe the discussion at the NCP August 17th meeting was that, and it mathematically came out 3-3 for a total of 6. So there's balance between Milwaukee and the other, but you didn't include my name in there, and I'm temporarily was on that list. So if my name should be included on that, otherwise, this is going to be the unincorporated area is underrepresented. And right now, at best, this puts it at 50-50.
I'll answer that. So yes, Commissioner, you are still temporarily a voting member of NCPR of DAB, just as you were before. I think normally we just put the public's names on that, not commission names, but we can add you to it or formally vote now as well. But yes, the intent is you remain a voting member to get the bylaws done. Would you like us to add your name to this right now? We can do that.
Yes, please, just so that's cleared on the record.
Yep.
So I move to approve the slate as amended.
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved in second. Let me see, is my mic on? Yeah, it's been moved in second to approve the slate as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please poll us.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston?
Aye.
Commissioner Samus?
I'm going to abstain for obvious reasons.
Commissioner Schrader?
Double aye.
And Chair Bernard?
No.
Boy,
All right, motion carries,
imagine.
I think. Did you abstain, Martha?
No, I voted double yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, so motion carries. Gary, next item?
Next, Commissioner Savas, board BCC position on the Metro Regional Transportation Measure.
Yes, colleagues, this is more Jim's. Jim was the representative on T2020, so I don't want to interfere or bump in or on this particular item. But because I am the transportation person, I have been recently asked for the BCC's position on this measure. And I think most of the time I have been pretty clear to say I was not the rep. I think a lot of people know that Commissioner Bernard was. But we've been asked for our position, and I've heard a couple of my colleagues indicate some reluctance to support it. So I'm not really sure what that is, but I would maybe want to hear from my colleague, Chair Bernard, as far as his comments. I'm reluctant myself to take a position because I'm on the boulevard and I own property, my home, which is near McLaughlin Boulevard. So however you argue it, I have either something to lose or something to gain.
My intention is to remain silent on this issue. Not going to take a position.
Okay. Is that the will? Is that the entire board? I just wanted to understand I'm not pushing one way or another, but
It's exactly where I am, Paul,
Okay.
because I understand the need, but there are two things that I'm worried about. I don't think we've gotten everything that we needed, particularly when it comes to the sunrise. And the other piece of this, the timing with what we've been dealing with COVID and now with the fires is not going to be conducive to anything this large actually passing at this point. So,
And besides the fact we support the children's levy.
well, we've all supported the children's levy. But I will be honest with you, there's going to be a heavy lift with that, and I think everybody knows it. And so my fear is if the children's levies fail, will folks come back again? I don't know the answer to that. Nobody wants to be against children at all, ever, in the kind of things that we are facing. But I also know this county, and I also know that timing is everything. And my concern has consistently been timing of these measures. We did a heavy lift with the vehicle registration fee. My experience in this county is you can do something like that, but it has to be timed. And then if you start layering on other kinds of taxes, that's when you see the kinds of shifts that we seem to be going back and forth in this county. And that's just my observation of being a long-term commissioner. So it isn't about being for or against, but it is about timing. And in this county, if you do a usual top-down kind of, we all, kind of a process with it, when you run a traditional campaign, I've observed it fail and fail again. When you do it from the bottom up is when we succeed. But that's just my observation, and it is, take it for what it's worth.
So the position is no position?
Yeah, I'm not taking a position.
Okay, so the board, the BCC is not taking a position on the measure. Okay, got it. That's all I needed.
Thank you.
Okay, last item is Commissioner Communications.
Who would like to start?
Well, let me,
Well, go ahead, Martha.
okay, I just want to say that we've had a recent meeting. This will probably come up as we go through our priorities of the locks project. Representative Meek is willing to move forward in the next full session with another bill in order to get us moving towards having a public corporation. I don't think we have the same level of lobbying support that we've had. I don't know, Gary, if you can speak to that at all, but it isn't DOA yet. So I do think it's something we ought to consider. I think it's something we ought to look at and consider. And I'm a little worried that Russ Axelrod will be leaving. He's been a real champion of this. He's been chair of the Locks Committee, and he's going to be leaving as of January, as far as we all understand. So I'm hopeful that Westland will have another champion with that. The only other thing is just watching these fires. I'm getting calls from everybody. I'm getting calls from my children overseas. Even here in Lake Oswego, where I believe we're relatively safe, you can still see the smoke, you can still smell it, you can still see the impact of what's been going on in a good 50% of this county. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Paul, you want to be next?
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Okay, wow. All right, Ken.
Well, we are still packaging and delivering food out to the senior centers throughout the county every Monday, or in this particular week, we did it on Tuesday. So that continues to help out our seniors. And the Fair Board had their grand opening and their ribbon cutting of the drive-in movie theater in Canby at the fairgrounds and event center. And I encourage people to take a little trip back, nostalgic trip back in time, and go to a drive-in movie and support the fair board and their activities there. And the rest has been lots of work around the house. Thank you.
Do they provide squeegees for all the steam on the window? I'm just kidding.
I threatened my wife that we were going to get in the back seat like we used to.
Sonia.
I just emailed Gary. I'm confused as to when we are discussing the Reimagine Oregon. Martine sent us all an excellent email that outlined everything that's going to be up for discussion on Friday, and I do not see it online that we're having a policy session about that today.
It's at 1:30 p.m. when you discuss board priorities, because this is one of your listed board priorities, the Reimagine commitments.
Excellent. Okay, I read the materials and I didn't see it in there, so I just wanted to make sure. So that we will discuss at 1:30. Jim Duarte just sent an email to me regarding AOC, and it appears he's been hacked. So do not respond to any emails regarding Jim Duarte. I just saw that.
I just got the email too.
Okay, so be careful, because we all want to help our AOC president, and we do not want to help him if it's not really him. So that's that. I don't have anything to add. I look forward to our discussion on board priorities. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to let this go, and we'll see you at 1:30. Thank you.